In this video, I will show you how to create a really cool dot effect for your Dotcember project. So let's get started. So you'll start off with a portrait or image of your choice. I think portraits work nicely for this particular project, so that's what we're going to go with. So something colorful is fun to use, so I'm just using a photo of David Bowie here. So the first thing you need to do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the background layer. So Command J. So now I have two background layers. I am going to go down to my Add New Filler Adjustment icon, the little black and white cookie, and I'm going to add a solid color fill, and I'm going to select black. Make sure you drag all the way to the corner, or make sure the numbers here are all zeros, so that you know it's solid black. Okay. And obviously I can't see that because it's behind this layer, but there it is. Okay. We do need to make sure that our image size is conducive to the project, so we need to crop this as well. You can actually crop before you do anything else, but click on my crop tool, and on the presets here you want to make sure you click on width by height by resolution. And in here, normally we enter, inches because it's something we're all familiar with. Here we're going to be entering pixels because you're working with the circles, and it'll just make sense in the end. So we're working with pixels instead. So you want to be somewhere between like the 1200 to 2000 pixel range for your dimensions. It's up to you if you want to do a square or rectangle. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and do a square. You could do 2000, I'm going to do 1500 for this. Okay, and the trick is you want to do, you can't just do 1500. You have to type in, you have to type in px, okay, and put the resolution to 72. Normally we do 300. For this project, we're going to do 72. Okay, so then you want to drag in your corners where you want them. I'm going to get rid of this black border here, and maybe I'll crop in a little bit so he's not so centered in that shot and it's more about his face. Okay, and accept the changes. I'm going to hit Command 0 to fill my screen with the image. So now our image is cropped, and we have to do a little bit of math. So my image is now 1500 pixels square. So if you were to use any of these numbers, you have to pay attention to what the factors of those numbers are. So if you decide to do a rectangle, and let's say you do 1500 by 2000, you want to make sure that there is a factor that can apply to both of them. So for this, let's just say we were doing 1500 and 2000, 25 would work for both. 50 would work for both. 20 would work for both. Okay, so even if I did a rectangular shape for my final crop, as long as they both have the same numbers here, you can go ahead and do that. I'll show you guys the equations and the written instructions, but pretty straightforward here. Just make sure that the numbers work. For all of these dimensions here, the examples I put, 10, 20, 25, or 50 would work for all of them, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. Okay, so we have our image cropped, and we added a black layer, and what we want to do here also is convert this layer to a smart object, which will mean we can edit the filter that we're going to apply to it. Okay, so I'm going to go up to Filter and Convert for Smart Filters. It's going to ask me if I want to do that. I'm going to click OK. Okay. Now we're going to turn this image into little squares. So we're going to go up to Filter, Pixelate, Mosaic. And it's going to turn our image into little squares. So it's very important that we remember what dimensions we used so that we have an even number of squares across our composition. So I'm actually going to change this to 30 because 30 divides into 1500 quite nicely, and also the smaller the cell size, the smaller my boxes will be, which will give me a little bit more detail. So let's just look at what 20 pixels would look like, or 10. Okay, so you have to pick what works the best for your particular image. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick with, actually 20 looks kind of cool too. I'm going to stick with 30. And you can change this very easily, so I'll show you how to change it in a second as well. Okay, so the smart filter, I have Mosaic on. Okay, and now I need to apply the dots. So what I'm going to do is actually make a new document. So what you guys need to do here, it's really important, oops, that you remember your cell size, 30 pixels. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go to File, New. And here you're going to, usually this is set to inches, here you're going to set this to pixels. The dimensions are going to be the exact size of your cells for your mosaic. Actually, I'm going to leave that at 300. Okay, and whoa, that's really tiny, right? Command plus to zoom in and let it fill your frame. You're going to click on the, actually we could just click down here to change our foreground color to black. Click on the paint bucket tool. I'm going to fill my background black, and then I'm going to use the elliptical marquee tool, which you guys learned about. I'm going to click in the corner. I'm going to hold the shift key down. I'm going to drag my circle out to the edge, and it's going to be weird because it's confined to these little squares, right? Click on my paint bucket tool, hit X on my keyboard or the little arrows here to switch back to white as my foreground color and fill that in white. It looks weird, I know, but that's okay, it's supposed to. Command D to deselect. Going to go to Edit, Define Pattern. You guys are used to Define Brush Preset. Here we're learning a new one, Define Pattern. So it's going to ask me what this is. I'm going to give it a name. It's very important that you name this because once you start doing this a lot, you're going to have to be able to differentiate between what we're looking at. So it's a 30 by 30 pixel. I'm putting in the dimensions so that I know what I'm doing. Click OK. You don't need to save this document. So go back here, okay, and I'm going to add a layer mask to my top layer. Okay, so that's the little rectangular icon down here, add layer mask. Here, this is now active, my mask is active. And again, masks partially reveal or hide different areas. So right now, because this is white, it's revealing this entire layer. I'm going to fill this in with a black pattern to reveal the layer below. So now I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. And I'm going to change it, the contents, to pattern. I don't know what it is by default, it might be foreground color. So change that to pattern, and you're going to go to custom pattern, so it's the last circle I made. And if you hover, you can see the sizes. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. And now you have that dot pattern, and because we did our math properly, our dots align perfectly and nothing gets cut off on the edge of your image, and that is exactly what we want. Okay, so that's the basic gist of the assignment. You can also do some cool things. I'm going to show you really quickly. You can either double click on your smart object layer here or click on the FX down at the bottom of your layers panel. You're going to click on Bevel and Emboss. And that's going to give it that cool effect of it sort of looking like three-dimensional little dots. So under Bevel and Emboss, you're going to change it to Inner Bevel. The technique should be Chisel Hard. The depth should be 100. We're going to go to Up. Our size is going to be 7. and 7 for size and soften. Angles 135, 32. We're going to make sure global light is not selected. Okay, what else? You're going to change the highlight mode to linear dodge at 50% opacity. The shadow mode should be at 0%. And then we're also going to add an inner glow. For that, we're going to make sure that the blend mode is multiply. We're going to set opacity to 20%. Make sure softer under technique is selected. We're going to make sure it comes from the edge. The choke should be at 22% and the size should be 9 pixels. And click OK. And if that doesn't look the way you want it to, you can always go back and change it. I'm actually going to maybe increase that a little bit. Okay. And then you can also add your add some image adjustments if you wanted to. You could play with levels. You could go to vibrance or hue saturation or color balance. I'm going to go to vibrance and just kind of increase my colors there. Okay, and you can see the difference that that makes. For some reason the dots don't look as good as they did in this one. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna have to play around with my settings here. Anyway, okay, so you took the time to set this all up. Okay, if you need to make changes, you can easily do that. So because you have the smart filters here, you can double click on this. You can change the image here. Okay, so I could go to File, Place Embedded. This opened up the source document here, so I'm going to add another image. I'm going to add a black and white image of him. And it embeds this in here. The transform tool is already selected, so I'm just going to bring that up where I want it. Hit enter to accept that. Okay, now I want to show you what happens. Go to window. Oops, window. Okay. So we're working in this document. So when I go to File, Save, it will automatically change the image in this file. Pretty cool, right? So let's look at what that looks like. Okay, so it just automatically changed the image here, and now I don't have to redo any of this stuff if I like how it looks. You could also oops. You can also change things. So let's say I don't really like this as far as the size of the circles go. So what I can do is I can go to Mosaic and I can change the size. So let's say I want to make them smaller. I can make them to 20 pixels. And now that looks weird because my circles are 30. So what I'm going to do is click on the layer, mask for the image. I'm going to hit Command A to select all, and then I'll hit delete, except that turns it all black, so I'll just hit Command I to inverse it, so now it's white. Now I can go to New, and since I changed my cell size to 20 pixels, I'll make this new document 20 pixels, and again zoom in, and you can fill this with black, ellipse tool, We're going to draw a perfect circle in there, and then paint bucket tool, X on the keyboard, just shortcut to switch your foreground and background colors. Fill that with white, Command D to deselect, edit, define pattern, and I already have one that's in here, but I'll save this anyway, 20 by 20, and hit OK. Go back to this image, and now in my layer I can go to edit, fill, select pattern, and my last circle is the 20 by 20, and click OK, and that looks like that. And because we did a solid color fill here, because this image is black and white, I could even change the color, you know, and you might like how that looks. All right. So feel free to play around with this to get the coolest look that you can. You can change the sizes of your cells as well as the sizes of your circles. There's a lot of tutorials on this on YouTube as well if you want to find something totally different, or you know, if you need something specific for your image. But like I said, a colored image or a colorful image tends to work really well with this. Of course, you could try black and white as well, and you can increase the vibrance to make it really pop. But that is, oops, that is the gist of it. So this is in color, this is with the bevel and emboss look, so it looks like they are like little pins, like thumbtacks or something like that. And then here's this version in black and white. Okay, so have fun with this, and hopefully this gives you a better understanding of masks and what you can do with filters and smart filters, and having the control over your image without having to redo things a million times. Okay, so have fun, and I look forward to seeing your images.